from my living room. I am being joined today with my engineer who's taking place for Brian. We got to get Brian back on. Matt is here with us. And, I have two very special guests. I'm going to bring on actually three guests today, but two very special guests. And one in particular that I want to speak about right now, who has been such she to me needs, like, for a lot of people in the boxing world, need no introduction, but just so I can just explain to you what Christy Martin has done for me in my career. I remember, being a domestic violence survivor, going into the gym and, trying to better myself from my abusive boyfriend, thinking I was fat and ugly at 17 years old, walking to the back of the gym and seeing boxing and being asked if I wanted to try, not knowing women box, not knowing anything, saying okay. And then all of a sudden, Christy Martin's name gets brought up to me. And, oh, do you know Christy Martin? Because, of course, they see a female in the boxing and they're like, oh, Christy Martin, you should, and then I started reading up and listening and hearing about Christy Martin. And it is such an honor, Christy, to have you on today. You have done so much for women like myself and just for the sport of boxing overall. But now to be united with you in being a domestic violence survivor and what you've gone through, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and being part of this podcast today and being in my life, not just as a role model, but now as a friend. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me and taking the time that we can work together and discuss domestic violence. Of course, we love boxing, but as I say, boxing is just my platform now so that I can talk about domestic violence and to bring the awareness to the people that it's not always just about the physical violence. It's emotional and mental and control. And there's so much more to it than just the bruises.
And just understand, and people understanding that. And we have another guest also, Russ Anber, the owner and CEO of Rival Boxing, one of the best in the business, or actually the best in the business. I mean, I won't fight without my Rival gloves. Absolutely. And thank you so much, Russ, for coming on and being a part of this today. I just want to kind of give everybody listening just kind of a background of how this kind of started. There was a lot of people saw my posts and knew that I was going to talk about this today and that I was going to have Christy and Russ on. Just speaking a little bit about the video that Billie Saunders had put out there as a joke, saying that he was, if a woman's coming at you and you're quarantined, this big joke about being quarantined and the woman coming at you, whatever. A lot of you have seen the video. Some of you haven't. Anyway, he hits a heavy bag. Oh, you punch her, and basically says like you're punching her in the face and basically condoning domestic violence. That was the first thing that was ignited. Okay. And then, people saw that. And then we get a response from a female. Claressa Shields responds with, a video saying, and again, I don't know if this is it seemed like it was a tit for tat. And I don't think neither one of these individuals, like I said in my post, have the maturity or the education to even know what those videos actually did or what they could do to everybody watching. And understanding the effects of that, not just on people actually dealing with domestic violence at home, but as a survivor, it pissed me off. It really pissed me off, and I'm sure it pissed Christy off too, because I'm like, that's nowhere near how you can respond to a situation like that. And so that's what's really bringing us on. Again, I'm not here to bash neither one of these individuals. It pissed me off, and it made me say, you know what? I'm not going to go highlight that, but I want to highlight what we need to hear, what we need to know, what needs to be done. And that obviously, if you are at home and your wife or your girlfriend, or even if your husband is coming at you, domestic violence is not gender specific. You don't punch them. You don't do that. Okay. And then in retaliation, if you're being hit, there's other things, which I'm going to bring on Diana of the Family Coalition. She's going to come on and speak a little bit about what we can do. But you guys want to comment a little bit? Because I know, we're a boxing family and we saw those videos. It kind of upset us. And I know, Russ, you were very upset about that.
I was, but I'll defer to Christy.
Okay.
I'm still old enough to be able to say ladies first. So I'll let Christy take the lead on this.
Well, I appreciate that. And my thought is this. I know that Billie Saunders has now said that it was in jest or whatever, but there are certain things you don't talk about. Like, you don't talk about somebody's grandmother that just passed away. You don't talk about, negative things that happen in people's lives. And you have to be mature enough, as you said, to know the difference and know how to discuss these situations. This is just something you don't joke about. I mean,
sure.
If it were his sister, would he be so willing to joke about it? If it were his mother, would he be so willing to joke about it? Probably not. So you have to always look at the bigger picture, not just that little snapshot maybe that you're involved in. And he thinks he's bigger than life, and this isn't his first time that he's
Yeah.
kind of screwed up, you know?
Mhm.
So he can't think he's invincible, you know, or that he can just say anything he wants. And I believe that's where he is in his life right now. He thinks he can just say anything, get by with it. And this is something we can't just let him or anyone. I mean, as
Exactly.
you say, let's not just target him. Let's say we can't let anyone make light of domestic violence. I mean, the statistics are crazy. Every 20 minutes in this country, there's a woman getting abused.
Yep.
I mean, that is crazy. The numbers are just, astronomical of the domestic violence victims and abuse survivors that we have in this country. So to make light of it, you can't. That's bottom line.
Yeah.
You just can't make light of it.
And to add to those numbers, perhaps, Christy, and again, I'm smart enough to know when I'm stupid, and I know that what you guys have been through, I can't speak from this, and I'm going to defer to what you guys know. But what I do know about is bullying, and I don't think that this strays much from that whole bully mentality and that bully concept, whether it be domestically or outside, the violence that occurs on one human to another, the imposition of one's strength and power over somebody else, especially in the physical sense, that isn't just related to domestic violence, it's related to bullying as well. And bullying wears many uniforms. Bullying wears many costumes. It's not your stereotypical overweight fat kid beating up the small kids in school for lunch money. It goes way beyond that. It goes into our society. It goes into doormen at bars. It goes into police who abuse power. It goes into a lot of areas where bullying occurs. Government officials who can bully you, who can push you around, who take advantage of your weak situation, whether it be financially, economically, racially, whatever that is, that happens. And I think those numbers augment to what even Christy just said, that the danger and the damage that's done to people domestically and outward is just terrible. And I think that people have to take a stand, and doing something like this, I think, is important.
Yes.
And it bothered me. I understand Billie Joe Saunders because I understand his background. I understand his mentality. I understand where he comes from. The same way that from my era, the same way I understand racial humor, that now we have to be very careful about, of what we do and what used to be accepted in the past and is not now. I get it. I just don't like that now. I think it's insensitive now, knowing what we know. Billie has a mother, he has a girlfriend, he has a wife, he has female people in his life, and you do that, and you wouldn't want that done to those people. And I think the same thing applies to Claressa.
I just want to stop you on 1 second there, because I actually had a conversation. I wouldn't be surprised if Derek Santos logs in, because we talked a little bit about Claressa and about Billie Joe Saunders, and going back to what you talked about where people come from. But you know what? I think there's a responsibility. There comes when you become a public figure and you start representing more than just yourself, especially in the boxing world. There comes a responsibility to know what your platform can ignite or what responsibilities are behind it. And I'm okay if he really believes that that's okay, then that's what he believes. But it's not okay. He knows that it's not okay. He apologized for it. So to me, it's a little bit, and with Claressa, it felt like a tit for tat and a little bit of an ego war. Like it was a little bit of her saying like, oh, well, this is what you do to a guy that does that to you. You hit him, and the way that she went about that. And I'm sitting there, and I know people have said to me, well, Claressa's from Detroit. I'm like, okay. And I'm saying, okay, I understand. We all have different backgrounds, but I don't necessarily think, I don't think that matters. I'm like, okay, but there's right and wrong. I don't care where you come from, and I understand but you got to think about that.
Right.
This is the way I see this. When kids, we're 15, we're 13, even when we're maybe 18, it's kind of getting close to the limit. But we have beliefs that are maybe not ours yet. But once you become, as you said, that public figure, you're representing not just yourself, but the boxing world, your community. Educate yourself before you open your mouth.
That's it. Thank you.
And that is what she specifically does not do on many fronts, but especially on this front, you cannot in any way, shape, or form to someone that is talking about being an abuser say you're going to hit them. I mean, that is not what this is about. That is nothing but inciting and increasing the odds of being a victim.
Right.
Or giving advice.
Survivor.
Yeah.
Or giving advice to victims saying, oh, if you're a domestic violence, like if you're in an abusive relationship, this is what you do. It's like, honey, if you've never been in one, you don't know what to do. Because you should listen to, let the people that know, like the third, like if you want, like Diana, who's going to come on, somebody like that, you know, and that's why I wanted to have this kind of, go ahead, Russ, you want to speak?
You know, well, what I was going to say was we have to be careful of mixing, you know, the role that we talk of boxers and, you know, what their image should be. Because if we were to put the video aside for just 1 second, and look at the conduct of boxers in general in this day and age, and I can say this when I say this day and age because I started training fighters in 1979. I saw the evolution of the fight game. I saw where it started and where I started and where it is now. So if we were to put those videos aside, I think there's a plethora of examples that we could lay out where fighters do not conduct themselves like the role models that they should, or like the champions that they are. You know, the things that go on at weigh-ins, where it now, because of TV, has become mandatory that guys have to face off with each other and talk to each other and talk crap to each other. And that has no place in the game. The greatest fighters in the world right now don't do that. You know, they let their talking in, but it seems like everyone is looking for that gimmick. Everyone's looking to step over the line. Everyone's looking for that physical confrontation in which athletic commissions don't do anything about it, and they let it happen, and it's almost encouraged to happen. And the more violent you can be, the more aggressive you can be, the louder you can be, the more foul language that you can be, it's almost rewarded for that. So
and just to say it's happening with the women too, because I see that now with the females stepping up as well, kind of like, and it's like, yeah,
Claressa's doing it. There's, you know, I mean, of course it's happening. I wasn't being gender specific.
No, I know. I'm just saying,
saying in general, this is what happens. So, you know, if you're expecting someone to act differently just because it's based on that one video that they did, like an old friend of mine used to say, "What do you expect from a pig but a grunt?" And that's what you're going to get. And I don't think it's any different that if you're pointing out that somebody should act a certain way because they have forget the video. And we could have had this meeting and this chat years ago.
Oh yeah.
You know, discussing how and what we're allowing to happen, what athletic commissions allow to happen. So
okay. Yeah. So to comment on that, I saw some people that I believe Billie Joe Saunders' punishment was is he being banned, or is he being? He's being
suspended and have probably been fined by the British Boxing Board of Control. And let me explain, if I may, the difference between the British Boxing Board of Control and regular athletic commissions as we know them in Canada and the United States.
Okay.
The British Boxing Board of Control is not a government entity. It is a club. It's a membership club. You are part of that membership. They have bylaws, rules, and regulations that control boxing, and they are recognized as the authority of such in Great Britain. So their measures are not related to only what happens legally. You're part of a club and you're subject to their rules and regulations, as you would be here if you were a member of a private club here. You would have to adhere to their rules and regulations. So they have an advantage on being the sole arbitrator of professional boxing in the UK, and the fact that they're a club, which gives them powers that maybe an athletic commission here wouldn't necessarily have. Because in North America, being part of an athletic commission, first of all, for the commission to have any power over you, number one, you have to be licensed. Number two, you have to have caused an infraction during an event sanctioned by said athletic commission. So this is where you run into a little bit of problems. You know that the sanction, the commissions don't have the empowerment to do what the British Boxing Board of Control is doing to Billie Joe Saunders. So I thought I should just clear that up for you.
That's I mean, it's very, yeah, no, it's very interesting. And that's good. Thank you very much, because a lot of people don't understand, don't understand that. But, going back to the whole thing about, regardless of what we're talking about, whether they're boxers, whether it's a platform, it's a video that went viral, and his apology, I'm sure, didn't go as viral as the video did, unfortunately. Matt, can you bring on Deanna?
I sure can.
So hi, Deanna, how are you?
Just fine, thank you.
Hello.
This is, Christy, I'm going to try this. Christy Martin right here. And we have Russ.
I'm not.
No, Russ. No. I'm looking at my screen for the pointing. But thank you so much for coming on, Deanna. I really appreciate it. I've done a lot of work with a lot of domestic violence victims, survivors in California, and that's one of the things, Christy, that I wanted to say too. That when I moved to California, I found out that Ventura County, which is where I lived, had the highest reported cases of domestic violence in all of California. So it was just amazing to me when I heard those numbers. I'm like, oh my gosh, and that's only reported, so we don't even know what wasn't reported.
Yeah.
So
the truth is, Marina, a minute ago I misspoke when I said every 20 minutes one person gets abused in the United States. No, it's 20 people per minute in the United States that are abused, and those numbers are crazy. And so again, for somebody to make light of that it's unacceptable.
Yeah. And I know that the victims like myself and like you, it took that really hit us home. And and again, going back to a little bit of what Claressa Shields did, and this is where Deanna, I wanted you to kind of, we spoke a little bit before, Claressa, and whether she was thinking she was doing the right thing or not, going on and telling victims or possible victims, this is what you do, because I know for me personally, if I would have tried to defend myself punching and doing what she said, I probably would have been killed.
Yeah.
So it's a very dangerous thing. So if you'd like to just speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me on. I started my interest in domestic violence long before I became a therapist, and I've been working with the Coalition for Family Harmony now over 18 years. I've worked with the children, so I've learned about the effects that they've had on the children when mom and dad are in a domestic dispute. I've worked with the victims themselves, like you and Christy, who have had the brunt of that experience. And I'm also currently working with the perpetrators. I'm working with the men who do abuse. And so I kind of have an overall feeling, everything that I've heard you all say, there is all truth to everything, especially what Russ was saying a little bit earlier. It is a form of bullying, but it is much more than that, because it does involve people that you think you love, you say you love, that you care about. And it's a different type of bullying in that sense. Yeah, I know that you and I talked before, Maureen, about this. What I'm seeing here is that there was a situation. So can I talk a little bit about what the cycle of violence is?
Of course, sure, please.
You would like to? Okay. So in cycle of violence, then there's many forms of it, but the most simplified form is that you start what we call a homeostasis or a calm effect. In other words, if everyone here is getting their needs met, if you all had your breakfast or your lunch, you're in a wonderful shelter, you're clothed, you've got all the needs met, then you are in a state of homeostasis, okay? Once something happens where you feel that you're not getting what you need, more than likely you're going to have a reaction to that. And when that happens, tension starts to build up. And if you don't know how to control your tension, one of the first things that you do is you become angry and you lash out. Now, I don't know, Billie Joe Saunders' idea was a joke. I don't know what caused him to do that. But in this cycle, someone's the brunt of it. And so what happened is that Claressa reacted because she was triggered by something he did. And in her reaction, she just perpetrated the abuse that was going on. In other words, fight abuse with abuse. And that is absolutely wrong. Everybody suffers. Mm-hmm. And yes, it is a form of bullying, and that's what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I said that, Diana, I was just trying to add to the numbers that Christy had put out, in that bullying is not also only just, someone pushing somebody around. Bullying can be many forms, and violence is one of them as well. I wasn't trying to, identify one with the other, because obviously you're right. It is from someone you love, and bullying happens that as well could be from people you trust or who have a high standard in society that do that to you. So I was just trying to augment the numbers that already Christy was bringing up. That makes the matter even worse.
Yeah.
So I guess going back to all this, now, and Christy and I spoke about the importance of doing this, getting everybody in and kind of speaking a little bit about right now, we have a lot of people that are quarantined and stuck at home, and the cycle that you just spoke about, I'm sure, is more likely to happen now because people are kind of stuck in a closed environment. And so can you speak a little bit about what you foresee happening there? And
Right. So again, going back to being in a state of homeostasis, if everybody's needs are being met, all the things that I explained, then you're in a calm state. What we are doing now is not very calming. What we're all going through, our stress starts to rise. And once you've hit that point where your stress starts to rise, your brain shuts off a part of your ability to think, and you will react rather than think. And so the point of it, you ask, well, what can we do? You need to find out what caused it first. You need to reduce the stress. And I've seen some wonderful videos on YouTube, and I've been meeting with many people who are saying, you find the antecedent that causes your stress, you reduce that. And once you reduce your stress and you're back in a state of calm, the chances of you becoming violent or the chances of you lashing out are going to be minimized. And yeah, you are right. The whole nation right now is in the flux of stress, and it sometimes gets higher than normal for some. And it is. I don't know how to respond. I don't know what to say. We're all stuck.
So now, I guess I think something that's important is recognizing domestic violence. I know and I'm sure, Christy, if you want to comment on this too, people that we've worked with and survivors, and even myself, I didn't even realize that cycle was happening. It began with emotional for me. It was emotional, and then it became emotional, mental, and then physical. And it was manipulation leading into the physical part where I felt like I deserved it. So I don't know,
Right.
Christy, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And I really think that in most cases, not in all cases, but I'm going to say, and this is just my guess, in a big percentage, the abuse starts out as emotional, control, manipulation, and then it escalates into physical. But in my personal situation, from day one of my relationship with Jim Martin, it was just all about control. And it was just a little bit more, a little bit each and every, month or quarter. It was getting a little tighter. He separated me from my friends, separated me from my family. He convinced me that the world was against me. It just grew and grew. And then he would stalk me. It went on and on. It was the ultimate bully. And that's what abusers are. They want to control every aspect of your life. And then when they lose control mentally and emotionally, then that's when, in my situation, it became physical.
Yes.
And now I'm thinking everybody is quarantined. We're all in the same house. And then, how does the person that is getting abused, how does that person, whether it's male or female, how do they get away to make a call for help, to call a domestic violence shelter, a domestic violence hotline? I feel like right now, the number of incidents has to be rising, but I also feel like the number of reports will be declining. So I think it's a very critical time for everybody to be aware. And again, we're socially distanced, right? So how can we be aware of what's going on with our neighbor, with our sister, with maybe our mother? Who knows? Our friends. We don't. So every little clue we have to be ready to pick up on.
I'd like to ask Christy and then the doctor a question each. And Christy, if I'm out of line, just tell me. And I'm really not trying to be. When you look back on this in your life, can you see, or do you remember at the times when those things were happening, how you felt at that time? Like, did you feel this is wrong, but I'm going to do it anyways, or this manipulation that's happening, this distancing from my friends, this control. Did you see that happening, or were you oblivious to it and seeing something else and only reflecting and seeing the difference now later on?
Well, first, let me say this. Jim would tell me that he would kill me if ever I left him. That was number one. That was enough right there. I should have left. But then as time went on, and I did see the manipulation and the separation, but I also felt like there was nothing I could do about it. Because at the same time, he's telling me if I leave, I will, if ever I left, he would kill me. So what was I going to do? And then
Right.
as my situation, my boxing, my professional and my personal life were so intertwined that if I leave him, then what is that going to do for my boxing career?
Correct.
So I was just stuck, and I tried to make the best of it. And I look back now and I feel like I gave up 20 good years of my life. But
that's why I asked the question, because I think I have no experience in this, so I'm just completely looking at this as an outsider, and I think that's the thing that is the most dangerous and most problematic for anybody involved in any type of situation, when they feel that they are being hurt, attacked, something's done to them, threatened. Where do they turn? What is the best avenue to turn to? And I don't know that answer is always clear. I'm not sure that all, and it takes a lot of courage. This is somebody who's a fighter herself and had the fear of, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I have nowhere to turn to get out of this situation, even when she knew it was wrong. And I think that's an important thing. And Doctor, I wanted to ask you as well another question. And again, this is a shot in the dark, and I'm
these are great questions, Russ. So this is great, because this is why I also wanted to have you on, because this is educating other people may have these questions that you have.
I hope I'm not stepping out of line here in asking this, but would I be safe to say that you probably do not see nearly as many domestic violence cases in the gay and lesbian community as you do in the heterosexual community?
That's a great question. And the answer is, you're probably right. We do not see. And going back to answering, well, before I begin, I'm not a doctor.
Oh, sorry.
I could lose my license if I said that I was a doctor. So I'm going to have to say a disclaimer. I'm not a doctor. But anyway, yes, we don't see it because there is so much involved. Going back to what Christy was saying, this power and control that the perpetrator has is based on fear. So there's so much threats. I mean, I'm going to take the kids away from you. I'm going to kill your sister. I'm going to kill the dog. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to hurt you. I mean, it's based on fear. That's why so many victims are afraid to leave, because of the consequences of all the threats. Even if you leave me, I'm going to go to your work and I'm going to be stalking you. I'm going to watch what you do. I'm taking the children away from you. You will never see them. So those are part of the reasons that victims they're afraid to leave. And in the gay and lesbian community, underneath that, there's a lot of shame involved right now, because people do not believe that domestic violence can happen between two men or two women. They don't understand the community. And so, yeah, it probably is not reported as much as we see. And we probably only see a certain percentage of reports. There are many victims out there right now that continue to be abused over and over and again. And we don't find out about it until they're dead. They've been killed.
My thought was that the reason we probably don't see as much of it is because there is not necessarily that physical dominance that exists in a male-female relationship, where there's a physical presence, there's a weight difference, there's a size difference, there's a man-woman difference, and all the things that you spoke about, stems from that power that one has, the physical power that one has, that in a gay or lesbian relationship, you got two partners that might be physical, might be equal in matchup physically. So there's a certain amount of respect. The same way how two men might not get into a fist fight when they're in an argument, but if it was the same situation between a man or a woman, or one of the two weaker, then there is that bullying and that physical imposition that we put on the other person. So that's why I thought maybe
there are other factors involved. For example, a gay couple, one might say to the other, no other man's going to have you. I'm the only one who's going to love you. So there's more emotional and psychological abuse going on between gay men. And if one of them is ashamed and is still, so to speak, in the closet or has not come out, I'm going to tell your mom and dad that you are gay and that I'm your lover. So there's still, the threats are still going on. And the same in a gay women couple. Same thing. Maybe previously she had been married and had children. They're still going to, I'm taking the kids away. I'm going to tell the court that you're a pervert or whatever. There's still those threats going on.
Okay.
You know, I want to go back a little bit to sharing, because my situation was a little bit different than Christy's, similar but a little different. It started with breaking me down self-esteem wise. You know, it started with just cursing or calling me names, and it was a joke. It was a joke. And then it started to go from there. It started getting worse. And then it started getting controlling, where we would go to a bar, and if a guy would talk to me, oh, you're flirting with him. Oh, and then we'd go home, and then he'd get into the fight with me, and I started feeling like, almost like I didn't want to upset him. It was just getting him upset because I wanted the relationship to be, because when we were together, we were best friends, you know, and then it started to spiral and get worse and worse. I think for people now is recognizing, I look back and as you know, with Russ's question to Christy, I look back at my situation and I wanted to please him. I just wanted to be the happy couple because I saw this vision in my head of this happy couple, and we had been that once, and I'm like, oh, it's okay. I found myself forgiving and forgiving and forgiving until when it became violent. It was at the point where I thought I was ugly. I thought I was fat. He had me believing that I could not be with anybody else and nobody would want me. And I would have issues at home as well that had, it was bashing on my self-esteem. So overall, my whole life, I felt this small, and I felt like I wasn't worth anything. And that when he hit me, I felt like I deserved it because my self-esteem was shot so low. So going back to that, when it comes to people in the household now, or even recognizing just the beginning of the verbal abuse, you know, and maybe the signs of the control, you know, however form they take in whatever, level they start at. I think it's important for people to recognize what does that look like? The controlling, what is okay, what is not okay, what is a joke and what wasn't a joke. Because I think if I kind of understood that a little more, maybe I would have stopped it, or maybe I would have set a boundary.
Yeah. I can tell you right now that I am fearful for the situation that we're in, because domestic violence continues because of isolation. I heard Christy say, no friends, don't go see your family, you know, these things. And where are we? We're all in isolation right now. That makes me very afraid. And someone had asked earlier, what do you do? How do you get out it? If you don't have a phone available to call someone, the police aren't coming to just, I mean, not that I'm minimizing their thoughts on domestic violence, but there are more pending things, I suppose, going on. And that's probably very low on their priority. So I'm very fearful about what's going on right now because of the isolation that we have. But you asked, what can you do about it? Keep your phone handy. Have a friend to connect with. Make sure your neighbors know what's going on. Don't minimize it. You know, if something's going on, like you were just saying, Maureen, don't minimize it. You think it's okay because you want the relationship to continue.
The fear of, like Christy said, her career it was so intertwined, you know, the fear aspect of it.
And it's so individualistic. I mean, there are many women, you know, the two of you in different cases, and there's many others that I've heard time and time again. And it's going to be very different for each individual, but you've got to get away. That's the first thing.
I like that, Diana, about, you know, have someone on the phone, have that one person that's your go-to, whether it be through codes or signals, or if you haven't heard from me in such a time, you know, that these are the red flags for the protection, because that to me has always seemed to be the biggest danger of where does someone go? Okay, you're in this situation. I know it's wrong. Like, you've gone through all that. If I want it, like Maureen, I wanted it to work. I want it to work. So now you get through all that and you fast forward ahead and you're still in this situation. Now you come to the realization, I need out. I got to get out of here. Well, now you start.
And the truth is, if you call the police come, and let's say they're gonna take him to jail. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just gonna come there. They're gonna just make a statement to him. Don't hit her. Don't touch her.
Then
what are you gonna do? What if they drive away and leave you there with him?
Exactly.
What is gonna happen now? And then you have to also know that there's a place for you to go. So sometimes, even though you want to call the police and you want to kind of help, maybe they're not the number one place to go. That's why if you could make yourself, we need to get the domestic violence shelters, the number, the coalition. Make sure that everybody and anybody, every place. A lot of women's bathrooms now. When you go into the public stall,
I've seen
shut
it.
the door and the domestic violence hotline numbers on there. That is great.
Yep.
Any time that any chance, you don't know when the time's going to be, but when you do get a chance, reach out, because these people that are running the shelters, doing the private domestic violence agencies, they are there to help you. They want to help.
And
I'll bring up a point that I know there's no 100% answer for this, but in Canada, if the police are called to a domestic violence case in the home, they are obliged to remove the man from the home. Even if after they say, no, he didn't do anything, I called at it, they have to remove him from the home. It's the law that they have to be taken out and then have to be, reintegrated, that everything works to make sure that he can go back into the house. So they can no longer this case of, you call the cops come over. Oh, no, we're okay now. We got into a little argument.
Or she doesn't want it,
or they say to you in front of the perpetrator, oh, well, would you like to press charges? It has nothing it has nothing to do with them. The Crown presses the charges. That they do it. They do the investigation. You don't have to ask the victim in front of the one who's assaulted them, would you like me to press charges? Which I always thought was insane in anything. Domestic violence. I'm like, what do you mean? Do I want you're making me the lawmaker that I'm the one who has to press charges? Like, in anything that doesn't make sense. But
I'm in Florida, and I don't know, Maureen, you might know this. If you call it a domestic violence incident, both the male and female, man and woman, they were both taken and arrested and put down. So, or arrested. Yeah, and they were both taken from the scene.
And that's actually something that I want to touch on, Diana, that we spoke about earlier. There was a case in California, actually, and it was a personal friend of mine, a family member of a personal friend of mine. It was his sister who actually shot and killed her husband and said it was self-defense. And she's now serving, is she a life sentence or 50 years in jail?
I think it was, I don't know if it was life sentence, but I know
it wasn't like 50 years. Yeah, it was a lot of time. So now she's now in jail and she has a son, and couldn't prove self-defense, and it was, it's an ongoing thing. But going back to Clarissa's video saying, like, this is what you do, we spoke a little bit about that on the phone, and in that case, why is that not what you do?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Meaning, when you're being hit, you hit him here, trying to get away. What do you do when you're in that situation, or what are the repercussions? I know some of the repercussions. If you hit back, you may get killed or completely beaten up, worse. Or what happens to you if you defend yourself and hurt him or kill him, and then what?
Yeah, and again, that's going to be a very individualistic decision to be made. But what you don't want to do is go back into that negative feedback loop. So that negative feedback loop is, he does something, she retaliates back. What does that do to him? Makes him even more angry. So instead, you're looking at this stairway that starts here. It's just you look fat today. She reacts by calling him something. So this verbalization goes out to the point where she doesn't like it. She slaps him jokingly on the face. He gets angry, and what starts happening? it continues to escalate. So that's what I refer to as a negative feedback loop, and it continues and it spirals. That is not what you want to do. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, going back to now, I know there may be, like we spoke about and Russ said about having that friend on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
What do the friends do? Because I know my friends were like, they wouldn't even know what to do if I, what do they do? What do what do the lifelines do if they don't know?
Yeah. The number one thing that I think that I commend you for doing is educating right now. So anyone who's listening and watching, you're educating them. So the more people that we educate, the more resources that we're going to have. When Christy mentioned there are many, many domestic violence hotlines in every state, people can call. What do? You have to, two things. Two movies that I thought did a really wonderful job. Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts, and then the most recent one, The Invisible Man. I didn't realize it was about domestic violence. I recently saw that online. Both of the women in there prepared ahead of time for an escape. And if you get to the point where I think the victim gets to the point where I've had enough. So the first thing you need to do is you need to pack a bag with money, with birth certificates, credit cards, clothes, hide it if possible. Kind of look into the future and say, when this happens, this is what I'm going to do. Some of my clients were able to leave, once he came home drunk and passed out. There are times where your partner. I mean, who knows you better than the person that you live with? You get to know their habits, and you let that person, that contact person, know when the time comes, this is what your role is going to be. So you need to define that role, whether it be your best friend, a sister, a neighbor. When you see me, with my bag coming out, this is where you need to take me, and have that ahead of time. And I know what Christy said, it's hard when they isolate you and you don't have that contact to be able to do that. Find a time, if you can. And again, I'm very fearful because we are so isolated right now that we can't make those connections.
Right. And there was just a report on the news that gun sales are going up all over the place, which is even a little bit more frightening, that gun sales are going up.
They're skyrocketing up, not just going
skyrocketing up. Yeah. And that's disturbing also, that there's going to be all these people that are home, sometimes with other people that they can't get along with, and now they have more guns in them.
Well, and I know and we spoke a little bit too. I was speaking to my Melissa, my die coach and best friend, and we were talking about the children, the kids who are abused, too, that are home now and they're stuck. They can't even go to school, and there's just a lot of going on right now. And I guess, the reason why I wanted this to come together was, like I said, to educate, to help share and educate and just let people know that, there's ways, there's things, but with the isolation, I mean, what do you recommend? The best thing to do would be to call a hotline if that person doesn't have the friend, or if they're afraid. I know I didn't reach out to anybody. I lied. I made things up. I made excuses. I was just, would you recommend the hotline, or how would they go about
if there
right now?
If there is no one-on-one connection, if you don't have a connection with a sister, a best friend, or a neighbor, call the hotline. There'll be an advocate on the other end that would direct you and let you know what would be the best alternative, especially if your life is being threatened.
And here's one more. If a friend has a feeling that their friend is being abused and the person isn't admitting it, what can that friend do? Or how does that friend go about helping save that person if they can even?
That's a very touchy situation, very touchy. You don't want to lose your best friend, and a lot of victims are in denial. I mean, underlying, they know, but they don't want to admit it. And so it's going to be a very strenuous relationship there. All you can do is continually tell that person, I'm here for you. If you ever need me, I'm here for you. I'm here for you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to get to, because I know that was exactly my situation, where if anybody would say anything to me, I would defend him. I defended him and I pushed them away. And that's, and so just saying things like that. Is there anything else that anybody wants to comment on? Is there anything else that you want to share, Deanna?
No, just that there are many hotlines. Like I said, every state, in our nation. And then there's an international hotline. I think it's called the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And that's a national phone number. They can connect you to local